Uh, we found ourselves to be in the midst of a pandemic, which has essentially meant that our court, regular functioning of our court has come to somewhat of a standstill. And courts today in India are hearing only urgent matters. While we are today in the fourth phase, at the end of the fourth phase of a lockdown, one thing that seems to be very clear by this time is that social distancing norms, physical distancing is something that is here to stay. Which essentially means that how we function, how our courts function, and that means how we function as lawyers is going to be somewhat different than what it was before COVID-19 happened. Today, we sort of take a sense of what that could look like and what that could look like for our own practices, and what difference that could make in terms of in terms of how we function, right? So we will start with opening remarks from our speakers. I would request Vishal, Mr. Vishal Kanade, to address us in the beginning.
Good evening, everybody. This has been an unprecedented situation in many ways. Just talking to the panelists, it was in March that we had seen each other in court, me and Rohan, that is. And you had from 16th onwards, even before the national lockdown, a situation where the courts were not functioning on a normal basis. Only urgent matters were being taken up. This was followed up by a complete lockdown, and we are in the fourth version of it now. This has affected almost all the stakeholders. Now, who are these stakeholders that we would talk about? Obviously, you would have the litigants, which is the most stakeholder in this entire system of administration of justice. You have lawyers, you have court staff, the judiciary, and so many other entities which are connected with this system. For working of our systems and courts, you would find that apart from the court staff, you have staff of lawyers, advocates, law firms, managing clerks, who play a critical role in how matters are dealt with or how matters are conducted. For smooth functioning of the courts, you have staff of associations like the Bombay Bar Association, you have Kirtikar Library, all important stakeholders. It is because of a collective effort from everybody that this show, if you could call it that, what we do on a day in, day out basis is to work now. All of these are affected. We have been under a shutdown. The issue before us is how do we normalize this? How do we take steps so that we have some semblance of normalcy and you can move to a situation where there is maximum dispensation of justice by matters getting heard and matters getting worked out. As we have seen, being an unprecedented crisis, this does not have a playbook. We do not know in that sense what are the steps that have to be taken. A recent past we have seen, there were some things which were really not thought of, in a sense, not to criticize or anything, but essentially these are circumstances where there being no playbook, you will have to have different kind of solutions. Now, take a place like Mumbai. The stakeholders that we spoke about, our own staff, the court staff, you would find them traveling distances of more than 40-50 kilometers every day. So unless this staff or this large body of people are able to reach the courts, really normal functioning would be difficult. So probably we'll need to all come together and work out modalities of how we can enable all these constituents to come together and contribute and have our cases which are being heard, which are only urgent cases now, that can increase. There have been representations, as we know, and all of us are working towards normalization as fast as we can. So one aspect would be taking care of our own staff, which in that sense would travel from long distances, maybe some kind of system by which we can earmark how many people can attend courts, be it court staff, because ultimately without their participation, getting files and everything, we know how our Places are fully packed with papers. So that is one aspect of it. Secondly, our own staff probably earmarking, working on a 30% or 20% kind of vacancy basis is something that we need to figure out internally. The other aspect is e-courts. We've all appeared on WebEx, the platform which is being provided right now by the Bombay High Court. By and large, my own personal experience has been quite good. You are able to, in that sense, address the court. There are arguments, albeit these are arguments for interim relief, so you can't have those uh, arguments for final disposal of a matter, but this is the beginning. So how do we formalize this? Maybe work out measures and means by which you have a more formal system of getting more matters listed, maybe more benches if possible, if that works out. And lastly, how do we integrate the litigant into all of this, which is the most critical factor. One of the things which we find is you don't have the presence of litigant as we are used to. Normally right behind us when the matter is being argued. Today, maybe he'll have a platform in the form of a link and he may be participating in proceedings, but it's not the same. For instructions that you may need at the spur of the moment, your litigant or the instructing person may not be there. So these are things that we need to work out and ensure that there is participation by all these constituents. So I think by today's debrief this exercise, maybe we can come out with modalities and some standard operating procedures broadly to see how everything can be brought together and we can maximize disposal of cases or hearing of cases.
Thank you, Mr. Kanade. Mr. Kama, may I request you to also give your remarks on the topic?
Sure. Hi, good evening, everyone. And firstly, Kalyani, it's Rohan, not Mr. Kama. So much like Vishal has said, and I think I don't want to repeat, I'd rather get into the interactive part of it quickly. There are many stakeholders in this and many people who are involved in this entire process that operate together as a collective whole to make our system, our legal system work. This effort, we are to move towards e-courts. And I must tell you, much as I am in favor of the push towards technology, I, for one, would personally be very sad to see these being only e-courts because I would miss the cut and thrust of a regular physical court presence there. A lot of what excites people like me as lawyers is to stand up in front of a judge and argue your matter. But the need of the hour is certainly towards moving our system into the 21st century. We need to embrace technology. And therein, to my mind, will lie the biggest challenge, whether it's e-courts, e-advocacy, or e-chambers, which were the three pillars of today's talk. The biggest challenge there will be to try and change everyone, all these stakeholders, try and change their mindset and bring them into the 21st century. And I'll be completely candid about this because this is a candid discussion that we are intending to have here. There are, according to me and from the people I've spoken to, a lot of lawyers, a lot of judges who are apprehensive, and understandably so. Particularly perhaps some of the older generation, they haven't had the experience of dealing with. I know one senior lawyer remarked to me that he hadn't had occasion to use a computer in 15 years or 20 years. So I understand that. I mean, I look back even at my practice and we tend to dictate to a steno. You tend to argue your matter in court. You tend to have a hard copy of a draft sent to you for the purpose of settling or whatever it may be. So very seldom do you yourself actually use technology here. So one of the biggest challenges I feel would be to get people change their mindset and move towards a technologically advanced state. Now, to do that, of course, as we discuss in the course of this session, we'll perhaps throw ideas back and forth. But according to me, a lot of it is we must embrace it and we must commit to it. I, for one, had a long-standing resistance to using my computer as a brief. And at every opportunity, I'd ask for a hard copy. But having no option now, and being equipped with what is a wonderful piece of equipment, the iPad Pro, I've really found that I've not missed a step. All it took was a situation like this to push me into that corner and force me to use it. And I find that if we embrace it and if we all say to ourselves, this is what it is, we have to use technology, we have to move forward with technology and commit to it. And I mean commit to it even in silly little practical ways. There's a particular app that I use for my arguing and for my briefs now. I had to force myself to sit for 4 hours one night and actually just learn how to use it. But once I did, it's entirely changed the way that I handle matters now in the recent past. Even things like e-chambers and e-advocacy, we'll talk more about it as the discussion goes on. But if not entirely e-courts, certainly according to me, the way forward is e-chambers. And I think this is something that I've already discussed with my chambers and my juniors. I think something that we will certainly implement, because it is, to my mind, one of the easiest things that I've learned to do through this lockdown period. A Zoom call, much as what we're doing today. It's really so simple. You don't need 10 people coming and sitting in your offices. Lawyers have to change their mindset. This old style practice where you call everyone at 5:15 in the evening and then have everyone sitting there while you sit and go through conference after conference or keep people waiting for half an hour. That sort of indiscipline that we're all guilty of has to change. It just simply has to change. We have to move towards a more streamlined, organized way of working. And I do believe that doing these, as we call it, e-chamber practices, such as having only video conferences, having digitized briefs, even conferences with 1 or 2 attorneys can easily be done over a WhatsApp call. It doesn't have to be a complicated exercise. Nobody has to set up a Zoom meeting. It's so easily done. And coming to the last limb very briefly on e-advocacy, again, that's really a personal call that each of us has to take. Do we want to move towards e-advocacy? I, for one, have found using this iPad to be so completely useful and so completely perfect that I genuinely might not move back towards hard copy briefs. I say this now, of course, one doesn't know when that tempting little green bundle appears on your paper, on your desk. But I do believe that for things like arbitrations, for things where there is large volume, it's an absurd waste of paper, time, effort to copy 20 versions of the same 4,000 pages when we can do it equally easily online. And we'll talk more about the practical aspects of e-advocacy, how to do it in court. It will also involve a large amount of collaboration, I feel, between the court and us. The court will have to also improve its technology, its infrastructure, and most importantly, its willingness to let people stand up and open a computer. Today, I know that there are people who would not be entirely comfortable with seeing someone open up a laptop and put that on the lectern. Those mindsets, I believe, have to change if we are going to move forward. But we'll discuss that more as we go along.
Thank you, Rohan. I think that there are some very interesting points, and it raises certain questions as well. And we'll come back to them as we proceed with this discussion. Tanima, may I request you to give your remarks on the topic?
Yeah, thanks, Kalyani. Hi, everyone. I will also keep my opening remarks brief. Thank you, Vishal and Rohan, for covering a lot of ground on this. Yeah, I mean, obviously times are changing, and it's a transitional phase for all of us in all fields, including the courts. And as Rohan rightly pointed out, it's going to be hard because our legal system is designed and structured in a way which requires physical presence. The whole court craft and even the procedures, they're all in a way designed so which involves physical hearing, physical presence. So making this shift to virtual world is obviously going to be hard for everyone, all the stakeholders. But it is definitely the need of the day. And but I also think that it's something which it can't be a complete replacement to the physical court appearances and physical court hearings. But yeah, in the coming days, we do need to look at how to minimize our physical contact where it can be avoided. So yeah, like things like e-filing, which would definitely help in digitalizing all the records and reduce a lot of physical contact between different people in the court, outside the court. e-chambers and things like that, having whatever you can do through virtual hearings should be done. There are obviously technological challenges which people are facing throughout the country, throughout the world. But of course, that's something which requires a shift in terms of mindset as well as technological accessibility to people. But I feel the one good thing is that the whole world is facing these crises, so it's not like we're alone in the boat, and there are examples we can draw from. And as just one last short point, I want to say that it's important for all of us to make sure in the system that because of a shift to the virtual world, it shouldn't be that the courts start becoming more inaccessible to the litigant or the public. We should use this opportunity to make it more accessible. So this is something which needs to be kept in mind while making this shift, and use this as an opportunity to kind of make it more transparent as a whole system rather than the other way around. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Tanima. I think that's a very important point. When we are moving forward, when we are looking at a change, we must be mindful of the fact that this does not lead to denial of access to litigants and to lawyers.
Yes.
And I think secondly, we must also ensure that whatever new systems we put in place are as effective, if not more effective, as the traditional old system, right? And I think that takes me to another question. I think all three of you have somewhere stressed on the point that that we sort of are going to have a change in how we function. But that takes me to another question that I believe even in the past we have had pilot projects for virtual courts, for e-courts, for e-filing and so on. And they have had limited success until now. What can we change looking forward so that these can function during for the future? So is it the lack of will that we need to tackle, or is it the lack of technology and the infrastructure?
I think it's all of them. It's a lack of will, infrastructure, and technology right now. But as Rohan had said in his opening remarks also, that so far it's only been something which you do out of choice. But now we are kind of cornered into not having a choice and going forward with this method. So this would, and as they say, necessity is the mother of invention. I'm sure this would, bring forward more ideas to make this system more effective and efficient. And yeah, I mean, there needs to be more innovation. Right now, I don't think the technology or the infrastructure or the mindset is up to the mark to make this a fully functional system. We are all still learning from, what we're doing right now, like going with the flow right now. But yeah.
Rohan, you need to unmute yourself.
In a sense, I think it operates in a bit of a waterfall. First, the mindset has to change. Because if the mindset changes, I think that's half the battle won. And I'm not saying this lightly. In fact, I remember you were mentioning pilot projects, and I always laugh about this. I remember in the Bombay High Court about maybe 10 years ago, we had got these giant screens that were placed on each and every judge's table. Now, I'm not under any circumstances faulting the judges, because if suddenly someone thrust a screen at me and put it on the lectern and said, now you argue from that, I'd have been completely lost. But I remember there was this funny instance where I walked into court, and while some of the judges were making a valiant attempt to work, a couple of the judges, and one in particular, she had very artfully opened her brief, placed it on top of the screen, and was using it as a podium herself. So rather than having those little plastic things that they rest their brief on, she was resting it on the screen. Now, really, in a sense, that's symptomatic of the problem. No one's bothered when they bring in these technologies. I don't know, but I don't think any serious training has gone into that. This is not something that you can just roll up to court one day, tell a judge who probably really hasn't had occasion to get onto a computer themselves, barring maybe some of the more recent or more tech-savvy judges may have had occasion to, but many people who haven't had the occasion to, you can't just plonk a computer in front of them and say, now go ahead and use it. it's almost impossible. There's so many things that go into it. For instance, sticking a post-it. You can't do that on an e-brief. Marking something, underlining something. Unless you have a proper training program worked out, and it need not be something that goes on for years, for maybe 3 days, 4 days, but a proper training program on how best to use the e-brief. I don't know if Vishal has encountered this, but in some of the courts I've been appearing in, it has been a problem for the judges to be able to access, and even for the lawyers, myself included, to access the different volumes. And unless someone really sits down and teaches you, this is how you do it, simple things, this is how you zoom up the screen, this is how you can take your mouse and highlight the screen, until those little steps are taken, we will struggle. And for those steps to be taken and introduced and to work positively, the mindset first has to change to being, yes, we will give it a fair shot. There will be trouble, there will be issues, but let's try. If you try, give it 2 months, I'm sure it will work out.
So as Kalyani had mentioned, the issue is whether we lack the will. So I feel really, if you see in our court, in the Bombay High Court, there have been concerted efforts in digitizing and in using this technology. As Rohan had mentioned, maybe 10 years back, and subject to correction, I think the first e-court in that sense, not e-court, but use of screen and everything, was in courtroom number 2. Justice Jandar used to preside in company matters. So that was for the first time, maybe 7, 8, maybe 10 years ago, where attorneys were asked to submit CDs for the first time, so as to have the entire proceedings digitized. So if you see, as far as the institution is concerned, by and large, you see evidence of the will to, in that sense, move towards digitization and to take steps to marry technology with our current systems. You also have a situation today wherein so many district courts, as I've heard, you have complete digitization. So let's say an order is passed in Nashik District Court. Within a day or two, you will have the soft copy available, right? So these are steps which have been taken and they have percolated down the system. That's not only the High Court, but district courts and others. So there is a will. I mean, I have no matter of doubt that the institution and lawyers, the fraternity in general, is conscious of this fact that this is where we have to move. So the will is there. The issue is of implementation, and given the vastness of the system, how do you have a common kind of platform which can be used by a lawyer in Bombay and a lawyer, let's say, in Ahmednagar or some other place? One interesting aspect we'll all notice because of virtual courts, you may very well have lawyers from district courts appearing in high courts on a more regular basis, now that the distance is cut off and you can appear on virtual courts and vice versa. So the will is there, probably more resources are needed, and that's always a question of priorities for the government. How do you implement it? It may be done in a phased manner. Remember the time when e-courts were introduced, company court to begin with. This was not keeping in mind, the pandemic that we are facing today. This is 1 in 100-year kind of situation. Probably because we had put in some infrastructure back then, we are reaping some benefits today. And you have some matters which are taken up, only urgent matters, twice in a week. So we need to expand this. I agree with Rohan. It's a question of mindset. And it's a question of, in that sense, using this as a standard uniform kind of platform for all courts. It will take time, but this situation, maybe it will act as a catalyst by which this can be replicated and introduced. Just one more thing before we move on. If we have been appearing on virtual courts, and many times it's the associate who keeps telling people, please switch off your mic. This is what we need to do. This is serial number of whatever, and he's called upon. So maybe some kind of systems where you need outside personnel, maybe someone from IT or those kind of sectors who will act as a bridge between the bench and the bar and get it standardized over a period of time. I think it's something which is worth considering.
Yeah, Vishal, just to take your last point forward, in Supreme Court, in the virtual court hearings, the control room of the court, which is handling the whole IT thing, is always online. So they
Okay.
do act as that bridge that you mentioned, and you can keep in touch with them over WhatsApp and tell them to mute or unmute
Right. Right.
certain hands,
Right.
or that there's some technical glitch. So yeah, you're right. That is very much needed, because you can't tell the judges that there is a technical glitch. So
So
yes,
on
that's
a lighter vein, whatever e-hearings we have had, they have been very civilized fencing kind of situations. We still not
right.
have had, and it can turn into absolute chaos. So if
Yeah,
someone, I
especially like
mean,
if it's a batch
yeah,
matter, or if there are
yeah,
bigger
yeah,
matters and a lot of lawyers
yeah.
are appearing, it's a complete chaos. So yeah.
I think these are, thank you, Vishal. These are some of the concerns that come up with the use of technology that we have presently. And I think that's a very interesting point that Rohan made, that he said you have to first change the mindset. And then, sort of things, people have to get more attuned to using the technology that we have. Uh, but that also takes me to my next question as to the technology. Often I've seen that if you have the correct technology, using, or rather ensuring that there is ease of use, might help people change their mindset a little faster than they would otherwise have. So for example, that's, I think, Rohan, that's like the difference between an iPad Pro and having a tab without the stylus, right? So I use an iPad Pro, so it's just seamless. It's so easy to sort of use it like a paper, but that ease of use may not come with certain other devices. Similarly, for using something like Zoom or WebEx that we're using right now, do we need a dedicated sort of a platform for virtual court hearings? And what all would we like to see? Vishal mentioned in his opening remarks that one very genuine concern is the difficulty that lawyers and litigants face in terms of giving instructions.
Yeah.
Right. So, are there any other things that you would like to look at in terms of how that technology should be, A, and B, can we really have one uniform technology which works for the Supreme Court, High Court, and all our courts and tribunals? Or should it be tailor-made as per each forum?
So Kalyani, if I could just get in on this one, there are a couple of things here. As far as getting a uniform technology across the country, it might be harder to coordinate that at the current moment. It might be easier for each high court to develop, whether it's its own software or whether they use a public forum like Cisco or Zoom or Google Meets. But it would probably be far harder for the entire country at this point to come on one page quickly. But I certainly think that it's necessary for the High Court over time, maybe, and this won't happen in a month, to develop a software which suits it best. That High Court, develop it, percolate it down to the district courts, and there have to be many practical parts of this. For instance, one of the difficulties nowadays is we try and screen share. But when you screen share on the current apps, it is only you who can control it. Now, I found that judges, for instance, get annoyed when you screen share something and they can't move up and down. So it's a question of developing the correct technology. I'm not sure if any of you all have had occasion to use something called TeamViewer. TeamViewer is this app where you mirror someone else's computer. So the stenographer sitting at his house is typing and you are seeing what he is typing on your screen, on your computer screen. And it's wonderful in this that I can control the screen. So while I'm sitting at my house, I can zoom up and down, I can stop his typing, I can press where I want him to edit something. So it's a question of really sitting down with people who are actively using these various apps on a day-to-day basis, lawyers, IT specialists, sitting down and perhaps conceiving of what all we need. Another thing that's very important, I think, is something that enables you in the course of arguments to upload. Currently, we have a system where we email the registry. Then the registry email, I was told recently that if you haven't emailed it before 11 o'clock that day, the previous day, sorry, the registry will not look at it. Now that's entirely useless, frankly, because supposing I find some judgments overnight for my matter and I want them to be seen by the judge or I want them sent to the other side, it's necessary to have some form of a software which allows you to upload. Now, these are all various facets which will come about, but I think we must certainly have one consolidated software because it also becomes very difficult for someone who has a practice in various courts. Say I practice in the NCLT and the High Court. Someone else may practice in the High Court and the City Civil Court. Then for each of us to learn a different software, a different technology, as it is, we're doing that for the NCLT. One is using video mobile, one is using WebEx. Now, if the district courts start using, Google Meets, it's going to be impossible. So to streamline the process and to make it actually work such that, as Vishal says, the lawyer from Ahmednagar can easily access the Bombay High Court, you need to have one streamlined software which works for everyone, at least in that state. That's what I feel.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Rohan, on that. We do need a uniform software, which needs to be tailor-made for courts, because using these different general applications which are not really designed for courts lack in certain features which we as lawyers need, such as citing judgments sometimes, or also what Vishal had said about giving instructions to seniors. I really felt the need of having maybe a private chat box right next to that screen, rather than WhatsApping the senior and him getting distracted and looking at my messages. It'll be easier if the same software has some kind of a system to keep everything in one place and make it more easier for people to brief. Even for litigants, I feel it's important that they get access to these links and have because if it's physical hearing, they can go to the courtroom and sit, but in virtual hearings, a lot of times litigants, even though they might have access to the links, they might not have internet connection, or so what are we going to do about that? Just because it's virtual hearing, it is not letting them get access to that. So what are the solutions to those problems? And also, in Supreme Court right now, the application that they're using, the video app, is not, it doesn't have a screen sharing system. So effectively, you are not able to show the judges anything which is not already on record, which is a big impediment, because there's no way to kind of upload documents or send out a new thing that you want to place on records, and even screen sharing, if you want to read out certain paragraphs, they have to open their own paper books rather than screen sharing. So I do feel that tailor-made software is definitely required so that it can come as close to the hearings that we are all used to. It comes close to that, so that we can continue using our existing skill set and not have to completely revamp everything, because I'm sure technology has ways to accommodate these needs. But I mean, I feel for trial courts, it might need more work. For appellate level work, it's still a lot of it is just based on pleadings, but in trial courts, there is a lot of evidence to be marked, and it requires a lot of, procedurally, it is more cumbersome to be done over virtual hearings. So I think that would need a lot of work, and maybe even amendments in the laws, which would accommodate use of IT during these procedures, especially criminal law procedures and things like that. And I feel actually that's another thing which I want to make, that it's important that these changes that come in are done in a legitimate way through actual amendments and not through executive orders the way they are being done right now. Because right now it's a transitional phase and we're taking things as it comes. But I feel in the long run, if some structural changes have to be made, it would need to be done through actual amendments in the procedural laws and through the legislature, instead of the way it's being done right
now. Can I just say one thing on this attorney briefing problem? I had given it a lot of thought, because we are entirely powerless without our attorneys. I think any counsel will tell you that you walk into court, the two things you're most scared of is where's my attorney and where's my brief. So one thing I have found that really helps, and just a practical tip I thought I must interject and say, is I put one earphone into my ear connected to my attorney on a regular phone call, not a WhatsApp call, not a WhatsApp video, just a regular phone call.
Right.
and you keep yourself and the attorney on mute, because otherwise you get the backlash from hearing the video from their end as well as your end. So that creates a bit of a distortion. But just keep the attorney on mute. And I found that worked beautifully, because whenever he or she wanted to say something to me, they just unmuted themselves, said what they were saying. And whenever I wanted to say something to them, I would just artfully sort of cover the mouth a little bit and unmute myself and say something to them. So that does work. I mean, I'm just saying
that's
that.
a good tip.
Thank you, Rohan, for that tip. I think those are some excellent points. I think that sort of, Vishal, do you want to add on to this?
No, essentially, it's I agree with both Tanima and Rohan. It's something that we'll get used to as time goes by, because as it seems, this situation will continue for at least a couple of weeks more. So over a period of time, we'll fine tune all these things and we'll get used to it. We'll get better at it. The comfort factor will increase.
Definitely. I think some good points that have come out in our discussion today is about how we can sort of fine tune the technology to best suit all stakeholders' needs. And I think as Vishal said, as we progress further, as we get more comfortable, as the technology gets better, we might be better able to argue through virtual calls. Going ahead though, I think it was a very interesting point that Tanima said, that if the technology is fine-tuned better, we can use our existing skill sets to sort of function in the times to come. But the change is going to also reflect in our offices, in our chambers, and it's going to change the way we function. What are the sort of skills that we need to look at as lawyers? How do we change our style of working in order to better suit the times to come?
So I think really the mantra that we hear now is social distancing. So I think we'll have to merge somehow social distancing practices in our day-to-day chamber work or the activities that we have. The staff that we have, maybe rotate, ensure that we at any point of time have minimum people with sufficient distance. Rohan mentioned this earlier, maybe all our conferences will have to be on the e-platform for the time being. And it works just as fine as opposed to having someone in your chamber. This is a perfect substitute, so that won't be a problem. Ultimately, I mean, we all know as lawyers and counsels, you need some support from your office end for the purposes of your briefs, books, so on and so forth. It's ultimately that part which I'm more concerned about. And how do we ensure that with social distancing, your precautions that you are supposed to take, if they're incorporated in your daily regime in the chamber, it shouldn't be that big of a problem. The only casualty will be, as opposed to having a litigant face-to-face giving you instructions, it will be now replaced by a digital platform. But for the time being, that will have to do. I mean, we have no other option.
So the one disadvantage is you don't get to see your client squirm when you're asking him tough questions. That you'll have to just rely on his upper part of the body to give it away. But just adding to what Vishal said, I honestly do believe, Kalyani, that this, of all the three broad headings that we're discussing today, e-chambers is perhaps the easiest one to implement. And, you know, we are all focusing so much on the COVID crisis being the reason, and obviously that's why we're all here and having this chat. But when you think about it, even from a client point of view, and as Vishal said, the litigant really is supposed to be the hero of the piece here. From a client point of view, it is just so much more convenient. So many of our clients come from the suburbs, traveling into town. I can't tell you how many times I've been called by attorneys saying, sorry, client is coming from Juhu running late. With the way our traffic systems are, with the way our public transport systems are, asking someone to come, even just from a very practical point of view, asking them to come from the suburbs in the heat of summer at 4 p.m, for what? So that we get the pleasure of seeing them sit across us for a 20-minute conference, which could really equally easily be done on exactly the forum that we're doing right now. And I'm sure we've all done now in the last 3 months, some conference or the other, some meetings or the other, some briefings or the other. And I honestly don't feel like I've missed even the smallest instruction because we're doing it digitally. So according to me, e-chambers should be easy. And I plan on doing this once we're actually back in court or back in chambers. I've already made it clear to my juniors that there'll be nowhere the COVID situation lies. I really don't want clients coming around and sitting there. It's not fair to me. It's not fair to them. In the way my chambers are set up, they'd be sitting outside and staring straight at my juniors, barely 2 feet away. I don't think it's fair to anyone to expose them either when it can be easily done. So I think we must make a move at least towards e-chambers and perhaps partly towards e-advocacy, if not towards e-courts entirely.
Yeah, Rohan, what you said is very true for Supreme Court practice as well, because here the clients are a lot of time from all over the country. And it's also very economically problematic for a lot of them to travel to Delhi every time there's a hearing or there's a briefing. So most of the times they don't, if they can't afford to, they don't travel themselves. And that is something which can now change because so yeah, I mean, it's economically beneficial. It's more time efficient. You're not getting stuck in traffic. Like maybe you could do 2 conferences as a briefing council. Now you can do 4 because you don't have to get stuck in traffic between different conferences. So it makes a lot of sense, and it's definitely one of the easiest things to transition to, amongst other things like e-filing and e-hearings could still take some time because it's technologically a more cumbersome thing to do. But yeah.
Even just to add to that, the necessity of the litigant to be present during affirmation, I mean, really there is no substitute to a large extent. So e-courts or procedures in court, maybe even in trial courts, probably will never be able to make that shift. Instead of looking at a document where, let's say, allegation is that of fabrication or something, the feel that the court or the lawyers would get seeing the document cannot be substituted by a scanned copy of it. So maybe some categorization, some matters will by and large be in courts, trials amongst others, but many other proceedings can be held on e-platform.
Thank you. That's exactly where I was coming at now, as to whether, we've spoken about how we can make changes, how we can make further, how we can fine-tune the technology to better suit our needs, how we require a change in the mindset. I think the question that still remains is, would we risk losing the humane touch by moving straight away to technology from traditional courts? So is this something that we look at as, if I may say so, becoming the new normal post-COVID-19? Or is it going to be a supplemental thing to our physical traditional court system? How do you see that?
I think it should be an option. It certainly can't be a replacement. I don't think any of us here today, at least amongst the panelists and those of us addressing this seminar, I don't think any of us really feel that courts should be done away with in the sense of physical presence in courts should be done away with. There's a lot aside even just from the charm of the courts, there's a lot of importance in having the court as an institution. It also, I can't tell you how many clients feel just the presence and the aura of the court when they step into the court. I don't think it's something that we need to go so far as to say, look, let's dispense with the physical courts. When things get back to normal, hopefully when coronavirus is not in our lives as a fear anymore, of course, we will get back into physical courts. I think what we must do and not miss the boat on this is use this as an option. Use it as a problem-solving solution for things like if there is a person who cannot travel to the courts, if there is a lawyer who is in some manner indisposed, or if he can't come from where he's coming, or if he really is a lawyer, like Vishal said, from Ahmednagar, who wants to also practice in the High Court, but can't afford to shift his base and move here. I think we should have it as an option. And I think from a practical point of view, because we must look at it from that point of view, can we actually do it? I think it's easily done. I think all you need to do in a court is put up a screen. And if tomorrow a person opts to have themselves addressed by video conference, it would perhaps be as simple as filing a precipice a day in advance, informing the associate. If the associate or the court or whoever, some authorized officer grants that permission, maybe 3 days in advance or whatever formula has to be worked out, then the court can also note, and on its board, you can always say, Mr. So-and-so via VC. And all it requires is when the matter actually comes up, you put on the television, that gentleman addresses from his house or his office, wherever he is, and we go on. And the next matter may be an entirely physical matter. And the one after that may again be a VC matter. But again, here I must emphasize, it's a question of everyone being willing to do that. All of us seem, at least speaking for myself, lack patience. So it's a question of being patient. It might have a few technical glitches. There might be times when you'll have to keep back a matter as a judge, even though you don't like keeping back matters because there's an internet issue. There will be all of those situations. But I think we can definitely put it into the system, give it a try. According to me, at least for a year, if we try it and then it doesn't work, it's a different matter. But we must at least try it for a year and give it a good shot.
Yeah, I think in addition to that, one more solution to reducing the crowds and having more physical distance in courts is like having live streaming of all the courts, because a lot of crowd in courts is like so that ways the litigants, they're not necessarily needed for the hearing, don't have to be there themselves. They can like even if their lawyers are physically appearing in court, they can view the hearing on through the live streaming. Or even like a lot of crowd in courts is a lot of times there are lawyers who are watching specific matters because that specific case might be related to their own case, or they just want to see gauge the mood of the judges regarding certain issues, and there are all these other intricacies. So I feel if there is live streaming of court hearings, that would kind of reduce the number of people in courts generally to a certain extent. So we'll have to look at different measures which can minimize physical, crowds in courts. So that's also one way to do that properly.
So whether e-courts will, in that sense, replace physical courts, or are we heading in that direction? I don't think so. I think broadly we can agree that this is a measure to ensure that dispensation of justice continues even during lockdown. And you have urgent matters heard on these platforms. As things get better, the primacy of physical courts would always overweigh e-courts. But as Rohan has said, it can always be used as one, it's optional. And secondly, it's a capacity or capability that you have developed during this experience or during this phase. So doesn't make sense to drop it all of a sudden. Some matters, maybe proceedings before prothonotory, for example. Certainly, I mean, we can continue with this over a period of time and make this a feature, not the primary feature, which will be physical court, but this is something which can always be used. If this was an option available sometime back in a lighter way for matters after 5 o'clock on Saturdays, on some other days, I would have certainly preferred e-court kind of thing if everyone was on the same page about it.
Yeah, that can be a good model. Like first half of the day, it can be just physical hearings in court, and second half, it's all the virtual court hearings, something like that.
I think just one thing I wanted to point out is we keep talking of e-courts and mixing it up with VC courts. There's a difference between having an e-court and a video conference only sort of situation. I think the happy mix is to have your physical courts, have your physical appearances, but have the infrastructure and the technology available such that in certain matters, maybe heavy matters which involve a large amount of volume of paperwork which can't all fit conveniently, some final hearings maybe, or matters where there are people from out of town or witnesses who can't travel, have the ability to move in a VC direction if you need it for that matter or for that set of matters or for that kind of matter. As Vishal says, now that we've actually done it, it would be foolish for us to lose that momentum after having got this far. So I think it's crucial that we realize that just when we say e-courts, people shouldn't go, oh God, e-courts, no, I want physical courts. There is a middle ground. And that middle ground is technology, infrastructure used in a regular physical court to make it e-enabled, such that you can have an e-hearing if and when required. That's, I think, the ideal middle ground.
And an excellent suggestion, Rohan, that you brought up was the hybrid court proceedings, where a certain lawyer who is not, for whom it's not possible to be present at the court at that point of time can probably connect through a VC hearing. And the lawyers who are not comfortable with the VC proceeding can probably physically be present there. That way, the whole aspect of getting consent of all lawyers and all parties involved to get on a VC hearing in a normal post-COVID scenario may not arise, and will ensure ease of access to all, in fact. I think another interesting feature which has come up, especially for while we are still in a phase where we are still sort of tackling this situation and we are trying to figure out how to go back to routine working, is telephone hearings. Has anyone of you had any experience with telephone hearings, and do you think that can work for our courts?
I don't think so. I did it once because I had no option. It was more like a WhatsApp call because this was in the early days when video mobile didn't work. It was okay, but it was completely, honestly, it was undesirable. And I find it very difficult to argue to a blank screen, because you have to respond. There has to be that give and take with the judge. If not physically, at least visually, you have to see how the judge is reacting. So often you have to stop arguing, change your sort of direction. You don't know whether the judge is irritated. You don't know whether the judge is listening to you. You don't know whether the judge is reading some other judgment while you're arguing something. I find it impossible to talk to a blank screen and try and make your arguments. Only in the absolute most urgent cases where it can't be otherwise, then maybe, but otherwise no.
Yeah, Kalyani, that would definitely take away that human element you mentioned. That would make it very not interactive and So
I agree. It would have to be a measure of last resort in that. So rarest of the rare.
No, but possibly in the present scenario, when for some lawyers access to that sort of internet connectivity and technology may not be available, maybe that's something that we can explore. I agree with Vishal that that's probably the last resort, but
as a
scenario
as a backup, even in Supreme Court right now, they keep a telephonic call as a backup in case the lawyer's internet is not working for some reason. Right now, because it's a need of the day, and there could be times where the lawyer is not able to connect to the internet. That situation, but it can't be. Or maybe for sometimes there are technical or administrative hearings. Like there are registrar courts which have only technical, certain pleadings have been filed or not, and things like that. I feel those kind of hearings probably can be done over telephones or something in which you might not need to really gauge the need of the judge so much. And so, maybe very, very limited purpose.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I think this was an enriching and a very interesting discussion of what technology, upscaling our technology might look like for all of us. We have some questions now. I'll go over to Abhay for the questions.
Thank you, Kalyani. We have a lot of questions coming in. One interesting question is from Anand Mohan. He asks, what kind of cases lend themselves best to an e-filing or an e-court or a VC court system? Is there a specific class or category of cases which would be particularly difficult to administer without physical filings or hearings?
Sorry, Vishal,
No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying perhaps one set of cases as a whole would be final hearings, because I would think, these interim applications, shorter applications, I find while we are doing it right now, on a day-to-day basis, they move so quickly, and very often you need instructions quickly, you need this and
Right.
the other, changes very quickly in a moment's time. Those would be harder. But perhaps a final hearing, the sort of situation where normally the court discharges the entire board in the afternoon at 3 o'clock. Those kind of situations, final hearings, even of motions, it doesn't have to be final hearings of suits. Final hearings which are likely to take more than 2 hours or 4 hours or whatever it is, something of that nature, I think you could have in an e-court where the judge is sort of comfortable in his surroundings. We all have our team around us, and then we're arguing remotely.
Yes, final hearings as well as maybe trial procedures can be difficult, maybe even impossible in the current, existing procedural laws that we have. E-filing, I mean, unless something is very voluminous and people are unable to maybe access scanners and things like that, I don't see a specific kind of cases which would be difficult to be e-filed. Because that's just simply digitalizing the hard copies. So I can't think of any specific class of cases which would be difficult to be e-filed.
So one class of cases which I feel should never be tried on e-courts or virtual courts are adoption matters, guardianship matters, or where matrimonial disputes where you have issue of custody. I think that human element of being there in court can simply not be replaced or substituted by a e kind of hearing. So those cases should not lend themselves to hearing on e-platform.
Kalyani, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I think I agree with Rohan and Tanima that final hearing matters are going to be very difficult to have a hearing on a virtual platform. But I think it's also a matter of technology and to what extent we're able to design the technology to suit our needs. And if we're able to sort of use the technology for the purpose of going through and sift through thousands of pages of pleadings and compilations, I think it could probably be easier for us to use virtual courts and that technology for final hearings.
I think we can certainly, I'm sorry to interrupt, but certainly as we go along, even when physical courts start, and I alluded to this sometime back, I think we can make some progress or make a move towards hearing of matters before prothonotary on e-platform on a permanent basis, or even registrar judicial where you have matters which are not that complicated as per rules. Just have them on e-courts and you don't need physical presence of so many people. I think you will retain the capability or the capacity of e-hearing, and it will become a formalized part of our system.
Another question that we have is in relation to a counsel's practice, where Siddhant Dave, he asks, how would a counsel manage multiple virtual hearings at the same time? And let me add something to this from the perspective of maybe perhaps address it to Tanima from the perspective of an AOR. How would an AOR ensure that the counsel turns up to the right virtual court at the right time?
Yeah, I think there could be pros and cons to the technology, to the virtual hearing here, because one, you won't have to physically run from one court to the other. So that's a good thing for the AOR as well as senior. They just have to maybe manage multiple browsers on their screens. But yeah, it would pose a huge challenge as an AOR to make sure that the seniors have logged into your virtual court at the right time. It would require a lot of coordination with their office staff, I guess, and phone calls. But I mean, I'm not sure if that's more difficult than the physical court problems with that. So it could be actually easier, I feel, to some extent.
Yeah, in all seriousness, I think it might be easier. It might be easier to get to from one court to another, where you don't have to run from courtroom 2 to courtroom 52. Yeah. Just switch the browser screen and go in.
And yeah, your office staff could be logged into different virtual courts at like the same time, and you can actually shuffle between
Right.
multiple screens. So
Yeah, but I think that's definitely yes. Vishal.
right now. I was saying, I think till we get comfortable with the technology, I mean, speaking for myself, I would rather be in one court to begin with, as and when you're used to it and it becomes a regular feature. Maybe you will be able to mentally also make that shift from one court to other. I think it's a question of how comfortable with you are with your technology and what you have.
Right. Another common theme of questions that we are coming in is about virtual courts affecting the majesty or the integrity of the court. Rohan mentioned something to that effect where he said there may be times when the litigant walks into the court, that has an effect on his psyche. So I would like to hear your views about that. Do you think it really affects the majesty of the court when you're sitting at court? Because we've had an instance where there was a lawyer who appeared in a not very appropriate attire before the Rajasthan Act. So does it affect the integrity of the court?
Well, in his case, it certainly did, I think. But other than him, no, so I think from a litigant's point of view, when I said that, what I really meant is, I'm looking at this very, very practically. It may not otherwise apply, but very often I find when you're in court, both parties are there. The judge can bring about some pressure to bear on the litigant, settle a dispute, for instance. Or very often what happens is a party makes some concession to try and work out a matter because he's there, and frankly because he's afraid of the court or because he's conscious of what the court might do. Sitting at home, that air of formality is lost. You're sitting at home in your chappals and shorts. You're not really tuned in the same way. You're not really in awe of the institution because you're sitting comfortably. It may play a part with the psyche of the client. It's not a major deterrent to having an e-court, but it may play a side part with the psyche of the client, to my mind.
So there are some elements of physical courts, some adjuncts which will always remain. They can't be replaced. So this is one of them. Litigant walking in the annals of the High Court, the structure, the atmosphere in a court, that can never be replaced in virtual courts or e-courts. So we will lose out on that. That is my feeling on this.
if I can just give an example of the whole idea of integrity of the court. In South Africa, their constitutional court is architecturally structured in a way that the litigants and the public is actually on a higher, physically higher pedestal, and then it's the lawyers at the bottom, and then the judges are in the middle, and it's very symbolic to represent that it's the public who's the ultimate beneficiary and at the highest level, and they have actually made an attempt to make the courtroom atmosphere feel more accessible and more comfortable for the public, because it's ultimately for their benefit. So in India, we are actually we make the judges sit at the highest pedestal, which is not a wrong or bad thing, but maybe we should also think on those lines in terms of why do we need that kind of aura or that that kind of fear that is instilled through that intimidating atmosphere that the courtroom presents. In virtual hearings, everyone is kind of everyone is on the same level, eye to eye level there. So I personally think it's not a very wrong or bad thing for the institution or institution sanctity like that.
Yeah, I was just thinking about young lawyers when they, first time when you step into the courtroom and the feeling that you have the first time you get into a courtroom, you cannot have that on a virtual platform. So I think like what Vishal said, you cannot, there are some things you cannot sort of design into the technology. You cannot design them into the platform. So that majesty remains with the traditional system of dispensing justice.
Right. Thank you everybody for coming on this platform and being a part of this panel discussion. Rohan, Vishal, Tanima, Kalyani, all of you. From a lawyer's perspective, I think all of us agree that virtual courts are here to stay, albeit in different forms and in a different manner. And the sense that I get is none of us really want to let go of the romance of wearing our gown and our pants and standing before district officers and arguing our cases. But I do get the sense that virtual courts would perhaps make justice more accessible to the litigant who, as Vishal rightly said, is the foremost stakeholder in this entire system. But having said that, perhaps our institutions, our judiciary, our bar needs to pay a little more attention to how we develop this system and not deal with it in an ad hoc manner. That's the sense that I take away from this. So once again, let me thank all of you for coming here and being a part of this. And I really appreciate you taking out time from, whatever it is that you're doing, lockdown and doing this. So thanks a lot to all our attendees. Thank you very much. I hope this was a fruitful discussion and will give you food for thought. I'm very happy to announce that our next speaker for our webinar will be Justice Ian Joseph, who is a retired judge of the Supreme Court, and he will be talking to us about the importance of cases. For all of us who have attended his court in the Supreme Court or perhaps in Kerala High Court, you have seen how important mediation and settlement was for him. So it will be a very interesting talk. So I hope all of you can join us for that. With this, let me announce that this session of the debrief webinar series is over. Stay safe, everybody, and we hope to see you for our next webinar session soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.